The galaxy stretched out in a tapestry of twinkling stars, nebulae swirling in a dance of ancient light, but aboard the UHS Mercy, the beauty of the cosmos was nothing more than a backdrop to routine. The silence of the void was a constant companion, punctuated only by the hum of the ship's engines and the occasional chatter of the crew. Today, however, that silence was shattered. Captain Jonah Marlowe's boots echoed sharply against the metal deck as he strode through the dimly lit corridors of the hospital ship. His gaze was stern, reflecting a mind at work, always thinking 3 steps ahead, a necessity in the uncharted territories of space. "Status report," Marlowe demanded, entering the bridge. The room buzzed with tense energy, officers moving with purposeful haste. "Captain, sensors picked up an anomaly a few minutes ago. We're trying to get a lock on it, but it's unlike anything we've encountered before," reported Lieutenant Harrow, his voice steady despite the uncertainty. Before Marlowe could respond, the ship jolted violently, throwing everyone off balance. A deafening roar filled the air, and the smell of ozone and burning circuits invaded their senses. Red lights flashed, bathing the bridge in an ominous glow. "Damage report!" Marlowe barked, gripping the back of the nearest chair to stabilize himself. "We've been hit! Unknown projectile! Shields didn't catch it in time! Hull breach in Sector 7, near the medical wards!" A technician yelled over the cacophony. Marlowe's heart raced, but his face remained a mask of calm. Every second counted. "Seal off the breach! Get teams to those wards now! Move all critical patients to secure zones!" His orders sliced through the panic like a scalpel, clear and precise. As crew members scrambled to follow his commands, Marlowe turned to the main view screen, which flickered sporadically under the strain of the attack. The external cameras showed a disturbing sight. Small, sleek vessels, their designs angular and aggressive, swarming around the Mercy like predators. "They're not just here for a show of force," Marlowe muttered under his breath. "Harrow, initiate defensive maneuvers, and someone get me a channel to these bastards. Let's see if they're in the talking mood." The bridge crew worked furiously, adjusting trajectories and firing off countermeasures. Marlowe watched the screen, his jaw set, as the alien ships darted through the debris of their initial assault with unsettling grace. Suddenly, the comms officer perked up. "Captain, I've got a response." On the screen, the face of an alien appeared. Its features were sharp, eyes a piercing shade of silver that seemed to reflect a cold, harsh light. "Human vessel, you trespass in the sovereign territory of the Krelar Imperium. Stand down and prepare to be boarded." Marlowe's response was immediate, his voice a low growl of defiance. "This is Captain Jonah Marlowe of the United Human Systems Mercy. We are a hospital ship, carrying no weaponry and posing no threat. We request safe passage and immediate cessation of hostilities." The alien's eyes narrowed, and a sneer twisted its mouth. "Your ignorance of our boundaries does not grant immunity. You will comply, or you will be eliminated." As the transmission cut, an icy silence fell over the bridge. Marlowe's mind raced. This was no random attack. It was deliberate and targeted. The Krelar Imperium was known for its territorial aggressiveness, but attacking a hospital ship was a new low. "Prepare for boarders, but keep trying to hail them. There's got to be a way to de-escalate this," Marlowe instructed, turning to face his crew. Their faces, lit by the glow of their screens, were etched with concern, but underscored by a resilient determination. Below decks, the smell of antiseptic and the soft beeping of medical equipment contrasted sharply with the chaos unfolding. Medical staff moved through the wards with a quiet urgency, tending to the frightened patients and transferring the most vulnerable to fortified areas. In these moments, the forgotten powers of Earth seemed far away, yet the resilience bred into the bones of those who called that blue planet home was evident in every calm instruction and every steady hand. Even as the ship shook with another volley, the spirit of the crew remained unbroken, their resolve solidifying into a silent oath to protect the lives entrusted to them. Captain Marlowe returned his attention to the task at hand, his strategy forming with each passing second. This was more than a skirmish. It was a test of humanity's resolve, a challenge to their place in the cosmos, and it was one he intended to meet head-on. As the UHS Mercy continued its desperate drift through the void, the aftermath of the initial Kreeler attack left its corridors ringing with low alarms and the heavy scent of charred electronics. Captain Jonah Marlowe stood at the helm, his gaze fixed on the holographic star map that painted ghostly constellations across the bridge's dim atmosphere. The starlight from the map flickered in his eyes, reflecting a storm of tactical calculations. "Update on hull integrity and patient status now," Marlowe commanded, his voice cutting through the residual hum of distress signals. "Sir, hull breach is sealed, but we're operating on backup power. Medical reports 32 patients relocated, 4 critical. No fatalities thanks to the quick containment," reported Ensign Lyle, his voice steady, betraying none of the undercurrent of anxiety that rippled through the crew. Marlowe nodded slightly, a silent testament to their resilience. "And the Kreelars? Any further communications?" "Nothing, sir. It's like they're watching us. Waiting," Lyle replied, his hands moving deftly over the luminescent controls. The captain's jaw clenched at that. The silence of their adversary was unnerving. A predator's calm, he thought, the kind that suffused the air before a storm. He turned to face his communications officer. "Keep trying, and patch me through to engineering. I want a full report on our defensive capabilities." As he spoke, Marlowe walked through the bridge, his boots muffled against the soft whir of circulating air, mingling with the distant echoes of commands and status updates being relayed throughout the ship. The walls, usually a comforting barrier against the void, now seemed to press inward with the weight of their vulnerability. Down in engineering, the situation was a tapestry of motion and muted chaos. Chief Engineer Ramos, a man whose youth belied his expertise, was orchestrating repairs with a calmness that was almost surreal. Sparks flew from a panel, casting erratic shadows across his focused face. "Captain, we've got partial control over the external sensors again, but our main thrusters are shot. Maneuverability's down to minimal. We won't be dodging any more attacks without some miracle work here," Ramos reported, wiping his brow with the back of his soot-streaked hand. "Focus on getting us moving, Ramos. Any progress is better than none. Keep me updated every 15 minutes, Marlowe instructed, his tone brooking no argument. Back on the bridge, as Marlowe re-entered, the scent of ozone was now mingling with a faint odor of burnt insulation, a reminder of the damage yet unseen. He paused, taking in the scene. His crew was efficient, their movements practiced and precise, yet the tension among them was palpable, a living thing that thrummed through the air like electricity. "Captain, you need to see this," Lieutenant Harrow called out, gesturing to a screen displaying a series of encrypted messages they had intercepted from the Kreelar ships. Marlowe approached, his eyes narrowing as he read the flickering text. The messages were fragmented, but a pattern was emerging, one that hinted at a chilling possibility. "They knew exactly when to hit us, where our defenses were weakest. It's as if—" Harrow trailed off, unwilling to voice the suspicion that was slowly dawning on them all. "As if we have a traitor among us," Marlowe finished for him, the words tasting bitter in his mouth. The thought was a corrosive acid, eating away at the trust that was the lifeblood of any ship's crew. "We need to investigate quietly. Start with anyone who had access to our flight plans and recent communications logs. And Harrow, keep this close. The last thing we need is a panic," Marlowe said, his directive clear and sharp. As the crew members nodded and set to work, the ship itself seemed to groan under the strain, a low, mournful sound that spoke of metal tested to its limits. Marlowe felt the weight of command settle around him like a cloak, heavy and inescapable. In the medical bay, the scene was a stark contrast to the bridge's cold technology. Here, the air was warm, tinged with the antiseptic bite of medical sterilizers. Dr. Soren, the ship's chief medical officer, moved among the patients with a grace that belied the urgency of his task. His hands were gentle but efficient, tending to the wounded with a quiet murmuring that soothed even in the midst of turmoil. Marlowe watched from the doorway, unseen. The resilience of his crew, the determination to hold fast against the encroaching dark, it was all here, in the gentle press of a medic's hand, in the steady beep of the heart monitors. Yet the seed of doubt had been planted, its roots entwining around his thoughts. As he turned away, the ship shuddered once more, a stark reminder of their perilous state. Marlowe's resolve hardened. They would find the traitor. They would survive this. For now, the Mercy sailed on, her course uncertain, her crew united by a thread of hope in the vast, unyielding cosmos. As the UHS Mercy limped through the shadow-strewn reaches of space, Captain Jonah Marlowe was a silhouette against the backdrop of starlit chaos, his figure etched with the sharp lines of determination. The bridge was quiet, a tense quiet, as if the very air held its breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Marlowe stood before the star map, its holographic blues casting ghostly reflections on his stark features. "Captain, the repairs on the secondary thrusters are temporary at best. We're still sitting ducks if the Creelers decide to come back," reported Ensign Lyle, his voice a low rumble that barely disturbed the hushed atmosphere of the bridge. Marlowe's response was a nod, his mind racing through scenarios, each more precarious than the last. "Keep working on it." "And what of the internal sweep? Anything to report?" he asked, his voice carving the silence cleanly. Lyle shifted, discomfort briefly crossing his features. "We've completed the sweep of the crew quarters and common areas. No direct evidence of sabotage from within. Yet. But, sir, there's an undercurrent of unease. Whispers of a traitor are stirring the pot." Marlowe's gaze hardened, the weight of command pressing upon him. "Monitor those whispers. They tell us as much about our traitor as they do about our own fears," he said, his voice a blend of leadership and warning. In the dim light of the corridor leading to the communications hub, Marlowe met with Lieutenant Harrow and Chief Engineer Ramos. The area was secluded, chosen for its minimal traffic during this sector's sleep cycle. The hum of the ship's strain systems provided a constant backdrop, like the growling of a cornered beast. Harrow's face was grim as he presented his findings. "We've traced the anomalies in the navigation logs. There's a pattern, Captain. Someone's been accessing them at odd hours, bypassing security protocols with expertise." Ramos added, "And there's more. The sabotage to the thrusters wasn't just physical. It's software, too. Someone knew exactly how to cripple us." The revelation hung between them, stark and chilling. Marlowe's jaw set. "We start tight. Pull records of crew who accessed those systems in the last 72 hours. I want a discreet watch on them. Non-invasive for now. We stir too much, and our rat might bolt," he instructed, his voice a low command. As they dispersed, Marlowe's steps took him to the lower decks, where the heart of the ship beat strongest. The engine room was a cacophony of clangs and hisses, the air thick with the scent of oil and metal. Here, amidst the chaos of repair and maintenance, he found solace in the tangible reality of his ship's heartbeat. He watched as the crew, a blend of seasoned officers and young techs, worked with a fervor driven by more than just duty. Their movements were poetry in motion, a dance of sparks and shadow. Each face was etched with the determination to keep their floating sanctuary alive. Marlowe's tour took him next to the medical bay, where the consequences of their vulnerability were laid bare. The stark white of the med bay was a sharp contrast to the engine room's grimy resilience. Dr. Soren was a steady presence among the beds, his movements deliberate as he moved from patient to patient, offering words of comfort that seemed to hang in the sterile air like lifelines. "You're holding up well, Doctor," Marlowe noted as he approached, his voice softening. Dr. Soren looked up, his eyes tired but unyielding. "We do what we must, Captain. Though I fear if the ship takes another hit, it won't just be the hull that breaks." The metaphor was not lost on Marlowe. The resilience of his crew was finite. Their spirit, while strong, was not impervious to the strain of betrayal and battle. "We'll do our best to ensure it doesn't come to that," he assured, clapping the doctor on the shoulder in a rare display of open camaraderie. Leaving the med bay, Marlowe's path took him along the outer viewing deck, where the vastness of space stretched endlessly, a canvas of black punctuated by the pinpricks of distant stars. Here, the isolation of their plight struck him fully. Their only companions, the silent watchers in the void. As the Mercy continued its wounded voyage, whispers of unrest and the ghost of treachery followed Marlowe back to the bridge. The pieces were on the board, moving slowly but inexorably towards revelation. The mystery deepened, a shadow play of fear and suspicion set against the backdrop of a starry abyss. With each passing hour, the tension wound tighter, like the coiled springs of a trap yet to be sprung. What lay ahead in the depths of the ship's labyrinthine corridors was a question on every crew member's mind, their glances laden with unspoken fears as they looked to their captain for guidance through the dark. The deep space silence enveloping the UHS Mercy was deceptive, a void filled with the tension of unsaid words and unacted plans. Captain Jonah Marlowe stood at the fore of the bridge, his gaze cast out into the infinite black, where stars burned distant and indifferent. The hum of the Mercy's strained systems formed a continuous undercurrent to his thoughts, a reminder of the precarious thread upon which they all hung. "Lieutenant Harrow, any updates on our suspicious crew activities?" Marlowe's voice broke the quiet, his tone steady but underlined with urgency. Harrow approached, datapad in hand, his face a mask of controlled concern. "We've narrowed it down to 3 individuals based on the access logs and their shift patterns. All have technical skills that could explain the extent of the sabotage we've seen," he reported, his voice a soft echo in the hushed atmosphere of the bridge. "Keep a discreet watch. I want eyes on them at all times, but let's not spook them. It's vital they don't know we're onto them," Marlowe instructed, his words measured, his mind racing through the implications of each potential betrayal. In the heart of the ship, the engineering bay thrummed with activity, where Chief Engineer Ramos and his team battled against time and damage to keep the Mercy operational. Amidst the clatter of tools and the occasional hiss of welding torches, Ramos worked with a quiet intensity, his focus absolute as he patched another conduit. Meanwhile, hidden from the prying eyes of the crew, Ensign Lyle monitored the movements of the suspects. The surveillance was subtle, a shadow play of glances and unobtrusive followings through the labyrinthine corridors of the Mercy. Every footstep, every turn took on new weight, the air thick with the scent of metal and the faint, ever-present odor of ozone. The day's cycle was nearing its end when the unexpected ripple of an alarm shivered through the ship. Marlowe felt it in his bones before he heard the sound, a prickling of his skin, a tension in the air. "Report!" he barked, striding back to the bridge with swift, determined steps. "Sir, sensors have picked up a ship. It's closing in fast." "Kreelar markings," came the tense reply from the communications officer, his fingers flying over the controls in a rapid assessment. "Damn, not now," Marlowe muttered under his breath. He turned to his crew, his expression hardening into the mask of command they knew well. "Battle stations, prepare to engage defensive protocols. Harrow, continue monitoring our suspects. This might be the moment they choose to act." As the crew scrambled into action, the external cameras relayed images of the approaching Kreelar ship, a sleek predatory shape cutting through the cosmos towards them. Its design was angular, menacing, a visual threat that matched the dangerous reputation of its occupants. "Open a channel. Let's see if they're in the mood for talking this time," Marlowe ordered, his voice a calm in the storm of activity around him. The screen flickered to life, revealing the cold silver eyes of a Kreelar commander. "Human vessel, you have something of ours. Surrender it or face destruction," the alien intoned, its voice a chilling monotone. Marlowe's mind raced. They had nothing of the Kreelars, unless the sabotage aboard was connected. Was there something or someone aboard the Mercy that these aliens wanted back? "We hold no Kreelar property. You must be mistaken," he responded, his tone deliberate, buying time as his mind whirled with possibilities. As the standoff continued, a sudden shout from the back of the bridge drew Marlowe's attention. "Captain, one of the suspects, Jenkins, he's making a run for the engine room." Without hesitation, Marlowe was moving, his legs carrying him swiftly down the corridors, the metallic echo of his boots a sharp counterpoint to the thrumming pulse of the ship. He arrived just in time to see Jenkins, a wiry engineer, duck into the engine room, a forbidden datapad clutched in his hand. "Jenkins, stop!" Marlowe commanded, authority and urgency lending weight to his voice. The engineer paused, caught in the act, his face a mask of guilt quickly morphing into desperation. "I had to! "They have my family, Captain, the Krelars. They threatened to kill them unless I helped." The confession hung heavy in the air, a toxic revelation that spread through the tense atmosphere of the engine room. Marlowe's heart pounded not just with the adrenaline of the chase, but with the heavy burden of command. Every decision now splintered into a myriad of consequences, each more daunting than the last. "Secure him. We need to sort this out, and we need to do it now," Marlowe said, his voice resolute, even as his mind reeled. The pieces were falling into place, a jigsaw of betrayal and external threat that painted a complex picture of the dangers they faced, not just from without, but also from within. The tense atmosphere aboard the UHS Mercy thickened as Captain Jonah Marlowe faced Jenkins in the dimly lit confines of the engine room. The air was heavy, tainted with the oily stench of machinery and the acrid scent of fear. Marlowe's eyes, sharp and assessing, fixed on the engineer whose betrayal had endangered them all. "Talk, Jenkins. Explain how this came to be." Marlowe's voice was calm but carried an edge that sliced through the murmur of the engine's thrum. Jenkins, cornered and visibly shaken, wiped the sweat from his brow, his eyes darting around, seeking an escape that wasn't there. "Captain, I didn't know who else to turn to. They said they'd kill my family if I didn't help them sabotage the ship. They needed it disabled for the handover." "The handover? What are you handing over, Jenkins?" Marlowe probed, his mind racing with the implications of every word. "It's not what, sir. It's who. There's a prisoner, a Kreeler dissident, hidden among the refugees we took on from the last station. They want him back, and they thought crippling the Mercy would make us vulnerable enough to comply," Jenkins stammered, the words tumbling out in a rush. Marlowe's gaze hardened. This complication changed everything. "Where is this dissident now?" he demanded. "I don't know, sir, I swear. I was just told to slow us down, to make us sitting ducks," Jenkins pleaded, his voice tinged with desperation. Marlowe turned to Lieutenant Harrow, who had been quietly observing from the shadows. "Secure Jenkins in the brig, increase security around the refugee quarters, and start a discreet search for this dissident. I want eyes on everyone." As Harrow led Jenkins away, Marlowe's thoughts were a whirlwind. The Kreelers' interest in a single dissident suggested a political intrigue that went beyond mere territorial disputes. He needed to tread carefully, balancing the safety of his ship against the potential diplomatic fallout. Returning to the bridge, Marlowe updated his senior crew. The room was tense, the air crackling with anticipation and dread. The external view showed the vast emptiness of space, stars twinkling indifferently to the human drama unfolding within the Mercy. "We have a potential Kreelar political prisoner aboard, and the Kreelars want him back. They've resorted to threatening our crew's families and sabotaging our ship. We must locate this dissident before the Kreelers decide to escalate their efforts," Marlowe briefed, his voice a beacon of authority amid the storm. The crew nodded, each member processing the gravity of the situation. Harrow returned to the bridge, his face somber. "Security has been doubled around the refugee sectors. We're also monitoring all communications in and out of the ship. If the Kreelers try to contact their man, we'll know." Meanwhile, the search teams moved quietly through the refugee quarters. The air was tense, filled with the soft murmur of displaced people and the subtle rustle of security personnel searching. Every shadow seemed to hold a secret, every face a potential story of intrigue and desperation. In the mess hall, a group of refugees gathered, their conversations a mixture of fear and confusion. Among them, a figure kept to the shadows, his eyes watching the unfolding security measures with a keen, calculating gaze. He was older, his face lined with years of stress and secrets. As the security team approached, he stood, his demeanor calm but resolute. "I am the one you are looking for," he declared, his voice carrying across the quiet hall. The security team swiftly moved in, securing the man without incident. Back on the bridge, Marlowe received the update. "They have him, sir. He's asking to speak with you directly," Harrow reported. "Bring him to the conference room. I'll meet him there. Let's find out what this is all about," Marlowe responded, his mind already racing ahead to the countless questions he needed answers to. The conference room was stark, the walls bare metal, the table a slab of cold gray. The Creeler dissident sat calmly on one side, his eyes meeting Marlowe's as he entered. "Captain, I am Thalric. I seek asylum from the Creeler Imperium. My fight against their oppression has made me a target," the man began, his voice steady but carrying an undercurrent of immense weariness. Marlowe listened, his expression unreadable, as Thalric outlined his role in a burgeoning resistance movement within the Creeler Imperium, a detail that could change the political landscape of the sector. As the meeting concluded, Marlowe stepped out into the corridor, the weight of the galaxy's politics heavy on his shoulders. This dissident could be a key to peace or a spark to a larger conflict. As the Mercy sailed on, her path was now more uncertain than ever, her crew caught in the web of interstellar diplomacy and covert warfare. With each decision, Marlowe felt the isolation of command more acutely, the starlight cold on his back as he pondered their next move. As Captain Jonah Marlowe stepped from the cold metallic confines of the conference room into the dimly lit corridor of the UHS Mercy, the weight of his encounter with Thalric, the Creelar dissident, pressed upon him. His footsteps echoed, a solitary rhythm against the hum of the ship's life support systems. The air carried a sterile chill tinged with the faint odor of antiseptic used to combat the spread of illness from one sector to another, a constant reminder of the vulnerability of their enclosed world. Marlowe made his way to the bridge, his mind racing with the political implications of harboring a figure like Thalric. The bridge was a hive of controlled activity, the crew's movements precise and subdued, their expressions taut with the strain of sustained crisis. "Update on our current position and status," Marlowe commanded as he entered, his voice cutting through the low murmur of operations. Lieutenant Harrow responded without hesitation. "We're holding position just outside the Ortis Nebula, a strategic point for both cover and quick escape routes. All systems are stable for now, and repairs on the secondary thrusters are holding." "Good. Keep monitoring those. We can't afford another breakdown, not now," Marlowe replied, his gaze sweeping over the array of blinking consoles and holographic displays that painted patches of light and shadow across the bridge. Turning to the communications officer, he added, "Open a secure line to United Human Systems Command. We need to update them on the Thalric situation and get further instructions." As the communications were set up, Marlowe's thoughts turned to the crew of the Mercy. The recent events had shaken the trust and morale that were vital to the ship's operation. He needed to address them, to reaffirm their purpose and unity. "Gather the crew in the main hall at 1600 hours. It's time we all spoke frankly about what's happening aboard the Mercy and our role in this larger conflict," he decided, his decision firm. The meeting in the main hall was charged with a palpable tension. Crew members filed in, their faces a mixture of curiosity and concern, the whispers and rustles of their movement filling the air. Marlowe stood before them, his presence commanding silence. "Crew of the Mercy, we find ourselves at the heart of a situation that tests not just our resolve to operate this vessel, but our principles as members of the United Human Systems," Marlowe began, his voice resonant in the hushed atmosphere. "We are not merely survivors of Creeler aggression. We are now protectors of a dissident who stands against tyranny." His words seemed to settle, heavy and significant, among the crew. Their faces reflected a range of emotions, from resolve to fear, from determination to doubt. "We will continue to repair and defend this ship, uphold our humanitarian mission, and navigate the political waters that we now find ourselves in. I trust each of you to perform your duties with the honor and diligence that has always characterized the Mercy," he continued, the depth of his conviction clear in his steady tone. The crew's response was a muted chorus of assents, the renewed sense of purpose slowly knitting together the frayed edges of their morale. After the assembly, Marlowe returned to the bridge, his mind clearer but heavy with the responsibility of his next actions. The nebula outside cast a swirling, ethereal glow through the viewports, its colors shifting silently, beauty and danger in constant flux. Suddenly, the calm was shattered by an urgent call from the sensor station. "Captain, multiple incoming signals. Unknown vessels closing fast." Marlowe snapped into action, his fatigue momentarily forgotten. "Battle stations. Prepare for possible hostile engagement. I want all hands ready and alert. As the crew scrambled, the first visual of the approaching ships flickered onto the main screen. They were sleek, aggressive in design, unmistakably Krelar. This isn't just a skirmish. They're coming in force, Harrow noted, his voice tight with tension. Marlowe nodded, his eyes fixed on the screen. Communications. Keep trying to hail them. Engineering. Give me everything you've got. We need to be ready to move at a moment's notice. The bridge was a whirl of activity. Each officer and crew member keyed up for the confrontation. Marlowe stood firm, a sentinel among the stars, as the Mercy braced for the impact of whatever came next. The stakes were higher now, with every decision rippling out to affect not just their lives, but the precarious balance of power in the sector. The unknowns loomed large, the mystery of the Kreeler's intentions a shadow that darkened the threshold of the future. As the UHS Mercy hurtled through the void, silhouetted against the swirling colors of the Ortis Nebula, Captain Jonah Marlowe stood resolute at the helm. The approaching Kreeler ships, their sleek forms slicing through space with predatory grace, were a stark reminder of the looming threat. The bridge was alive with activity, each officer and crew member focused intently on their duties, the air thick with the electric tang of anticipation. "Status report," Marlowe demanded, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Lieutenant Harrow responded promptly, his tone mirroring the gravity of their situation. "Enemy vessels are closing in. They'll be within firing range within minutes. All defensive systems are primed, and the crew is at battle stations." Marlowe nodded sharply, his gaze fixed on the tactical display. "Prepare to execute Maneuver Sigma 5, he ordered. This was a risky play, a series of calculated thrusts and feints designed to exploit the larger ship's inability to navigate the nebula's dense gas clouds as nimbly as the Mercy could. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Ramos and his team worked feverishly. The scent of ozone and hot metal filled the air as they rerouted power to the engines and shields. "Boost the aft shields and prep the lateral thrusters. We'll need all the agility we can get," Ramos directed, his voice echoing over the clatter of tools and the hiss of welding torches. Back on the bridge, Marlowe turned to Communications Officer Patel. "Once we engage, open a channel to the Kreeler fleet. It's time we talked, but on our terms." As the first Kreeler ship came into range, the Mercy dipped sharply, diving into the nebula. The ship shuddered under the strain, the low rumble of the engines a constant reminder of the thin line between tactical ingenuity and disaster. Inside the nebula, visibility dropped, the viewport smeared with the cosmic dance of gases and dust. Marlowe's plan hinged on the Mercy's superior sensors and the nebula's disorienting effects on the Kreeler ships. "Keep us moving, unpredictable patterns. Let's make it hard for them to get a lock," Marlowe instructed, his eyes darting between the radar and the main screen. Meanwhile, in the communications bay, Patel opened the channel, her fingers steady despite the palpable tension. "Kreelar Command, this is Captain Jonah Marlowe of the UHS Mercy. We wish to negotiate," she broadcasted into the void. The reply came moments later, the Kreelar commander's face appearing on the main screen, his features rigid with barely contained hostility. "You have something of ours, human. Surrender the dissident, and you may yet survive this encounter." Marlowe stepped forward, his figure firm against the backdrop of star-streaked darkness. "We are prepared to discuss the terms of asylum for Thalric. However, aggression against this ship will cease immediately, or we will take every necessary action to protect our crew and our mission," he declared, his voice resolute. The Kreeler commander hesitated, his eyes narrowing. The nebula's interference was buying the Mercy crucial time, each moment allowing them to maneuver and strategize. Finally, he inclined his head. "We will hold our fire. Speak your terms." With the Kreeler fleet temporarily at bay, Marlowe convened a quick strategy meeting with his senior officers. "We need a plan that ensures Thalric's safety and leverages our position to strengthen diplomatic ties. Any aggression on our part could ignite a larger conflict," he explained, the strategy room charged with the undercurrents of their precarious situation. The discussion was intense, each officer contributing insights and options. They settled on a multifaceted approach. They would offer to mediate between Thalric and the Kreelers, under UHS auspices, turning what could have been a military standoff into a diplomatic opportunity. As the meeting adjourned, Marlowe felt the weight of command heavier than ever. Each decision could tip the scales in unpredictable ways. Yet, the crew's dedication and the calculated risks they were taking spoke to the very essence of their mission: peace through strength and diplomacy through determination. Returning to the bridge, Marlowe prepared to relay their terms to the Creeler commander. The ship steadied within the nebula, the stars outside a tapestry of light against the shadow of war. This was a gambit, but one Marlowe hoped would secure a future where the Mercy could continue its mission unimpeded by threats or warfare. The balance of power was delicate, and as he faced the screen, ready to negotiate, the future of many hung in the balance, waiting on the words that would either weave peace or sow discord. As the negotiations resumed, Captain Jonah Marlowe faced the Creeler commander on the screen, his posture embodying the calm before the storm. The nebula's eerie light flickered across his features, casting long shadows that seemed to underscore the gravity of the moment. "We offer to mediate a peaceful resolution with Thalric under the auspices of the United Human Systems. Your aggressive tactics must cease," Marlowe stated firmly, his voice resonating through the bridge with authoritative clarity. The Creeler commander's eyes glinted, reflecting a turmoil Marlowe hoped was an internal reconsideration. "Your words carry weight, human. But know this: Thalric is a traitor to our people. His asylum would not be without consequences." Marlowe nodded, understanding the stakes all too well. "And yet, continuing this conflict will only bring further scrutiny and retaliation from the UHS. Is a war what you seek, or can we find a diplomatic route today?" he countered. The challenge set. The bridge crew watched in tense silence, their duties momentarily forgotten as the drama unfolded. Lieutenant Harrow monitored the communications closely, ready to intervene at a moment's notice. "We will consider your proposal," the Creeler finally conceded, his tone grudging. "Hold your position. We will consult our superiors." As the screen went dark, Marlowe turned to his crew, his eyes sweeping over each member. "Well done, everyone. Stay sharp. This isn't over yet," he cautioned, the weight of leadership mantling his shoulders like armor. In the hours that followed, the Mercy remained suspended in the nebula, the silence of space enveloping them like a shroud. Marlowe used this time to strengthen their defensive measures and to speak individually with his senior officers, reinforcing the plan and their morale. Finally, the Creeler commander reappeared on screen. "We accept your mediation, Captain Marlowe. Thalric will be transferred to a neutral station under UHS protection, where his claims and our charges against him will be heard." Marlowe nodded, a subtle relief washing over him, though his face remained stoic. "An escort from the UHS fleet will rendezvous with us to ensure compliance and safety for all parties involved. We thank you for your cooperation." As the transmission ended, cheers broke out across the bridge. Marlowe allowed himself a brief smile, but his thoughts were already on the next steps, ensuring the handover went smoothly and that the Mercy remained out of harm's way. The following days were a whirlwind of activity. The UHS fleet arrived, a formidable show of force that served as a deterrent to any further Creeler aggression. Thalric, solemn and resigned, was transferred to the flagship where his case would be adjudicated in what would no doubt be a highly watched interstellar event. Captain Marlowe watched the convoy disappear into the starlit distance from the viewing deck, his heart lighter, yet heavy with the knowledge of what had been risked and what had been gained. Later, addressing his crew in the main hall, Marlowe's voice carried a timbre of pride and solemnity. "Today, we have navigated through peril, not with brute force, but with steadfast diplomacy and unwavering courage. Let this be a testament to what humanity can achieve, even in the face of overwhelming odds." The crew's response was not just in their cheers, but in their renewed vigor, in their shared glances that spoke of respect and a deeper understanding of their role in the galaxy. In the quiet that followed the celebration, Marlowe returned to the bridge. He stood before the vast viewport, gazing out at the stars that once seemed mere points of light, but now felt like beacons of hope. The Mercy's journey continued, her course set towards new challenges, but her crew was ready, united by a belief in their mission and in the strength of their ideals. Marlowe felt a profound connection to each starry pinpoint, each a witness to the Mercy's testament of human resolve and diplomatic prowess. As the nebula's gases swirled like the tail of a phoenix rising from ashes, the UHS Mercy sailed onward, her name a byword for peace in a galaxy where conflict was the norm, her legacy a beacon for all of humanity. In this vast, indifferent universe, they had affirmed that even amid stars and shadows, humanity's light could shine the brightest.